Hey everybody! In this module, we're going to be going over artificial intelligence and emerging technologies in legal research. We'll specifically be talking about what AI is, how it works, the basics of it, and then we'll touch briefly on some of the products offered by Westlaw and Lexis. The primary goal of this module is to just give you a basic understanding of these technologies because you will be seeing them in practice, and having an understanding of how they work will really, I think, help you avoid a lot of the pitfalls we've been seeing with lawyers who are using AI products to produce legal materials. So, first let's go over the basic technologies that are used by AI. So the first one, you've probably heard of algorithms before. Anytime you do a search on Google, in Lexis and Westlaw, in any database now, algorithms are what the thing is that does the search. And each database will have a different algorithm. There's not a common algorithm between different databases. So basically what an algorithm is it's a set of instructions or criteria that the database software has to carry out when you do a search. So the point of an algorithm is basically a set of instructions on how to do the search and then how to present the results to you. And in legal databases, well, actually in every database, we don't know specifically how the algorithm works, but there are some basic components to an algorithm that we'll talk about. So what this slide is telling you is that, like I said, because every algorithm is different, you're not going to see a lot of duplication between Westlaw and Lexis, for example, because their algorithms are going to work differently. While you're here in law school, you can kind of use that to your advantage between Westlaw and Lexis. So you can do the same searches in either platform, and you'll see that while you get a lot of the same results from doing a search, you will also get different results, and the results will be ranked, the results list will be ranked differently. So it might be, when you use them together, it will be easier to find a wider array of materials because you're basically gaming those differences, if that makes sense. So basically, while you're here in law school, use both of the platforms together to take advantage of how their algorithms are different. In practice, you more likely than not will only have access to Westlaw or Lexis, but if you go through the different search techniques that you learned in the case law search manual and the statutory search manual, you know that there are different ways to search in Westlaw and Lexis. For example, using the key number system, using the index in statutes. And when you take all of those search techniques, the keyword search, using the key number system in Westlaw, for example, and using headnotes, you're getting all of those benefits, and that is what allows you to find all potential results, even if you only have access to Westlaw or Lexis. If you have any questions about that, just shoot me an email, okay? So what an algorithm does is it basically does the search by ranking things. And we know that all algorithms have some type of what we call term frequency weighting. So basically what this means is that how often your search term appears in something will define where the results are in your list of results. And let's see, what else do I want to say about that? Generally speaking, the more common the term, the lower it's ranked. So for example, a very common word, it's going to have a lower ranking because it's used in everything. But the more uncommon the term, so for example, a proper name or a specific legal jargon, that will move that term higher up in the ranking, okay? So that's one of the things we tell you as librarians to use, is try to use the most specific keyword that you can find, if that's possible in your search, because that has a higher ranking in the algorithm. So this is the basic breakdown of how weighting works, generally speaking. So I'll re-emphasize throughout this video that each algorithm is different, and how they rank will be different between different databases. But this is the general concept. Basically, it's a point system that is assigned to terms. And the higher the points assigned to a specific item in the database, the higher up it moves on the ranking. And the ranking will also depend on, so if you're using multiple terms in your keyword search, if the thing in the database has all of those terms in it, it might get assigned extra points, which will move it higher up in your results list. Okay. So here's an example, a ranking example. And this what we call natural language search in Westlaw or Lexis, what we mean is that you're not putting any connectors in between the search terms you're using. It's just like a phrase, like this example here. Infringe Coca-Cola trademark. So again, natural language means that we do not have any connectors in between our search terms. Okay. So here, infringe will likely get a lower number of points because it is a very common term, okay, especially in legal materials, right? As well as trademark. Trademark is a very common term, so it's going to get a lower point value. But Coca-Cola is a very specific thing. It's a proper name, and because of that, it's going to get a higher amount of points. So say it finds a document and it only finds Coca-Cola, it doesn't find trademark or infringe, it will likely be brought up into your results list because it has a higher point ranking. And this is the problem with this type of natural language search, because we're not telling the database how we want the search results to be defined, right? So when you do use a connector, say infringe within paragraph, so /p Coca-Cola, it has to find that infringe term within the same paragraph as Coca-Cola to bring it up in the results. And personally, this is why I do not do natural language searches in databases, because I don't want this ranking system to define what results I get. Okay, so generally speaking, even though the algorithms are so sophisticated now, I don't like to have that algorithm define my search. Okay. So in my personal opinion, using a terms and connector search is always better because it gives you some control over your search, and it ensures that your results will the materials in those results will have all of the keywords that you're looking for. So here's a points ranking example. And again, this is combining that ranking with the point value. So every time it finds infringe, it's going to basically earn 5 points, right? So if you have infringe 4 times in an item, it's going to get a total of 20 points for that term, and etc., right? And the other thing about natural language searches and algorithms is that the algorithm will define the proximity, the weight of the proximity of how close the terms are together. So remember, in the English language, how we write is that ideas that are closely related to each other are spatially close to each other in writing. And that's where the connector, like within paragraph, within sentence, /s work, because we're defining using a logical connector a concept, right? So when you do a natural language search and there's an algorithm, the algorithm is what is defining proximity, okay? And again, that's all built into that list of rules that the algorithm has, okay? It will also be looking for what is called completeness, right? So does the item have all of the search terms somewhere in that item, right? And if it does, it might get ranked higher because of that completeness. And then your results page is organized by that point system. So the item with the most points will be at the top of the list, and then, going down. So this is what we know about the West search algorithm. So this is when you do a search in the search bar in Westlaw. We know that it uses term frequency rate weighting. We also know that it uses crowdsourcing. So basically what that means is the more often a document has been looked at or downloaded, that becomes a weight factor in the algorithm. And what it's doing is it's looking at the search behavior of all Westlaw users for that. And then it automates the process of applying key numbers, key site annotations, and secondary sources. And that sounds fuzzy because it is fuzzy. We don't know exactly how this works, okay? These are just the basics of any algorithm, and Westlaw and Lexis and all other subscription-based databases, their algorithms are proprietary. So we don't know the specifics of how the algorithm works. So these are the potential problems with having an algorithm define your search for you. So yes, of course, we want to see what is most often used, but there may be something that would work perfectly for your particular situation that no one uses. So that's going to get ranked lower in your results, and it might not even show up in your results because it doesn't meet the other algorithmic criteria to pull up in your results. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's not going to find everything you need because it doesn't understand what you need, and it's using these criteria that don't necessarily apply to your specific situation. Algorithms also don't work well if it can't find anything that meets its ranking criteria, right? So one of the things that we do as lawyers is that if there's nothing out there on our specific situation, we have to find analogous or closely related things and bring them together to synthesize a new concept or a new rule or a new law, okay? Algorithms do not do this very well, okay? And like I said, we do not know how specifically these algorithms work, so that takes away a lot of control in our research. And it will also, because it is a coding program, right? So if you're not meeting all the requirements of the code, it will do one of two things. One, it won't work, it won't bring anything up, or it'll bring up things that it thinks might be relevant, but they actually aren't, because it has to fill those categories. The code says you have to bring up results for this, right? And that can be very frustrating because it's bringing up stuff that you don't want, but then you have to double check because maybe you'll miss something, right? So in that sense, algorithms can work against you because of this requirement that it bring up results, even if it doesn't find anything that's matching all of your criteria. The other thing about algorithms, just like any other piece of software out there, any computer code, it's created by humans. So it can have mistakes, which is typical, but it also will reflect the biases and the assumptions of the person who creates the algorithm, or in this case, the group of people who create the algorithm. The other thing to know about the creation of algorithms is that Westlaw, Lexis, all of the big databases, they actually have IT, they have software departments that develop these algorithms, and they're not necessarily lawyers, they're not necessarily educated in the law, right? So they're going to be thinking like computer scientists, which sometimes will often be in conflict to how a lawyer needs to think, okay? And we'll see, one of the things we do as librarians is when we're using Westlaw and Lexis and we see that the algorithm is not giving relevant results or their rankings are way off, we will go to our Westlaw or Lexis rep and say, hey, this is what's happening when we do a search and it shouldn't be happening. And so what they have to do then is then go to their developers and say, hey, this, how you change the algorithm isn't working. So it has to be a back and forth. And if you're using Westlaw or Lexis and the search isn't working right, and I can't really explain what working right means, just that if it's pulling up really bad results, you can always call up the 800 number at Westlaw and Lexis and say, hey, this is what's going on with my search. What's going on? Or am I doing the search wrong? Meaning maybe there are different keywords you should be using, etc. And the other thing, like I mentioned previously, each database has a unique algorithm. So each database is going to be a little bit different. You can't just learn how one algorithm works and think it's going to work the same in every other database. So now let's talk about AI products, which you've probably heard a lot about. A lot of law firms are already adopting legal AI products. The thing to know about them is that they are not perfect, and we will discuss here in a couple of minutes how they can get you into big trouble if you don't use them wisely and if you don't use them smartly. Okay, so basically what an AI product is something, it's a computational system that attempts to simulate human intelligence. So basically learning, reasoning, problem solving, decision making. We already know that Westlaw and Lexis have introduced AI products, and there are other companies out there that develop and target legal AI products for law firms, and there's a ton of them out there, and when you go out into practice, you will probably come into contact with some of these other AI products. Here at the law school, we only have access to the products introduced by Westlaw and Lexis, but I think we can discuss these generally. Okay. So, what is an AI product besides the fact that it tries to simulate human intelligence? Basically, an AI system is created by using algorithms, large language models that work within a confined data set. Okay, and these data sets are massive. Okay, so what is a large language model? I think it's really important to understand what a large language model is, because in AI products, the LLM is basically the foundation of the AI. And if the LLM that they're using to power the AI is a bad one, it's going to turn out bad results. Okay, it's going to turn out bad work. If you want to know more about large language models, I've linked to the webpage by Stanford University in the Canvas page for this module. It does a really good job of very simply explaining LLMs and what they do. So essentially, a LLM is designed to understand and generate human-like text based on the input it receives. Okay, it uses concepts like deep learning techniques, computational neural networks. So if you think about the neural networks of the brain, it's like making connections between different things. Data processing, so that's literally just processing huge amounts of information so that the information within specific items can be identified. And then complex language pattern recognition. So remember what I said about words being close together in writing, meaning indicating that those concepts are related. That's what a complex language pattern does in a computer system. It uses a set of rules to identify the meaning of language. Okay. There are some massive limitations, though, to LLMs, and I think these limitations, you could basically say these are the limitations of AI. So even though we're talking about artificial intelligence, the system, AI, does not understand the content. What it's looking for are patterns within the data. So that, to me, is not intelligence. That's just pattern recognition. Okay. Again, it's going to inherit the bias of the developer. Okay, and it will then amplify that bias as it processes. Okay. Over-reliance on training data. Essentially, this is like the data set they put into the model, right? And that's what the LLM is and the algorithms are working with. So if you have poor data going into the model, it's going to put out poor output, okay? So bad goes in, bad will come out. It really cannot obtain complex reasoning the way that our brains can. So going back to that consideration of one of the things that we do as lawyers is we have to take disparate pieces of information and try to bring them together, right? An LLM cannot do that. That is higher complex reasoning that an LLM is not capable of, and in my personal opinion, will never be capable of that. Our brains can make connections in a millisecond, okay? That's our power, and so I think the concept that AI is going to take over a lot of complex tasks is erroneous, because it will never get to the point of what our brains can do. It also, as you've already probably heard, generates incorrect and misleading information. And the other thing to know about LLMs and algorithms is that they're constantly being fine-tuned, okay? So they are not static. So when you use the AI product in Westlaw on Tuesday and you come in on Thursday and use it again, likely things within the algorithm and the LLM have been tweaked, right? So you're never going to get the exact same results. Okay, even if you put in the same questions, right? You save that list of questions you asked it previously and you come back a couple days later and ask it again, you're gonna get different results. Okay, and that is an issue for research, right? Because we always need to be able to go back and redo our search and find the same things. Okay. So this is, both Westlaw and Lexis have an AI chatbot now. It uses, or it models its LLM off of Bard and ChatGPT, but the data is only the materials that are within Westlaw and Lexis. It's relatively new, it hasn't been around that long, and it's okay. This says good, but not that good. I'll say it's okay. I mean, it's a way to get started, right? But you shouldn't use it as your single research method, okay? So these are the positive of the chatbots in Westlaw and Lexis. They can perform basic legal research quickly. So if you need to know the statute in California on air emissions, that likely will bring back all of the statutes related to that pretty quickly. Performs rote tasks efficiently. So drafting a standard document, or summarizing a document, or creating a timeline for you. It does really well at that. And it can also identify patterns quickly, which makes sense because that's one of the basic things that an LLM and an algorithm do, right? They identify patterns. The negatives. The negatives are huge. They hallucinate authority, okay? So this can lead you down a rabbit hole of trying to find things that don't actually exist. They also will misstate the law, okay? Even though these Westlaw and Lexis are working within a closed system, so they're only pulling information from the materials that are in the databases of Westlaw or Lexis, it can still misstate law. Because if you think about what an LLM has to do, LLM always has to produce a result, right? That's just part of how it works. So even if the answer it provides is incorrect, it's done its job because it's produced a result, right? So it might cobble together things that really are not connected to each other to produce a result. The cost. So we'll see here in a couple of slides that the cost for blindly using the AI produced material in Westlaw and Lexis can cost you quite a bit in the end, okay? Is that worth saving 5 minutes? And this kind of goes back to if you know how to do basic legal research well, you don't need to use an AI chatbot to get you that basic information. That is the only thing it does well, right? So if you efficiently know how to find statutes, if you efficiently know how to find case law, you don't need to use an AI chatbot to do that work for you, okay? Black box, meaning since we do not know how these systems actually work as far as the criteria and the framework that has been used to build the AI product, that can be manipulated, okay? And whether or not it's intentional or unintentional doesn't matter. because it can mess up your work. Okay. Also, Westlaw and Lexis say that their AI products protect confidential information. So, for example, confidential client information. But as we know, security and privacy in software and computational systems is never 100%. So there's always that risk of your client's confidential information being accessed. Okay. Copyright, there is some risk of potential suit. And then the other thing is that since these things change so quickly, again, like I said, we don't know when they tweak things. What you learned may no longer be valid or applicable in 6 months' time, 1 year, whatever. Okay, so again, this comes back to having the basics of legal research pat, okay, because all of these negatives won't happen to you if you're able to do legal research using the standard, well-proven techniques, such as using terms and connector searching, using indexes, using digests, using secondary sources. Okay. Okay, so next slide. Another thing you have to consider when you're using an AI chatbot is how you ask the questions. So these products work better if you if you ask the questions conscientiously, right? So your question should be clear. It should provide context. You should hedge your bets by using both natural language, so like common terms, and specific legal terminology. Just like you would with a keyword search, you need to play around with different wording or phrasing. Okay, always give the specifics that you know about. So the jurisdiction, the time frame, the area of law, etc. That should be part of your question. Specify what types of information you're looking for. You always need to check and verify the information it provides. Okay? Ask follow-up questions and understand the limitations of the AI product that you're using. And sometimes you will know, the database provider will tell you what the limitations are, but then you already know the basic limitations of an LLM, an algorithm, right? Those are just inherent in these products, okay? If say you're using the chat bot to summarize the case law in a specific area of law, and if it doesn't give you any citations or references, ask it to give you citations or references. Provide feedback. So remember, these computational systems ingest feedback. So, if you get a summary and it's patently wrong, provide that feedback into the chat box. Say this is wrong because blah, 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 blah. Okay. Personally speaking, I would never put any confidential information into a chatbot, even if it's Westlaw or Lexis, or something that you buy, because again, anything that is in a database somewhere can be breached or accessed. Okay, and then, to the best of your ability, if you're using AI products frequently, stay informed about updates. Most database companies will tell you overarching changes, right? They're not going to give you like the specifics, but they'll say, like, for example, Westlaw and Lexis will come out and say, we've added this set of materials to our AI product, right? So for example, when they first started their AI products, the database that the AI was pulling information from, I think, was just case law, federal case law, and statutes. That's all it was pulling from. But as they've added more materials into its data set, they'll send out like a little press release saying, now we've included all West secondary sources. Okay. Okay. The other thing about AI is that it is, by necessitating, generating new professional standards. And these standards are kind of coming from all over the place. Courts are issuing judicial standing orders on artificial intelligence. Sometimes the court will not allow the use of AI, okay? Or commonly they'll say, you can use AI, but you need to go through every one of the citations that the AI generated and double check them, okay, to make sure that they aren't hallucinated. You need to double check synopses or summarizations that the AI has provided, because they are often incorrect, so you have to verify that information. Firms will vary. Some firms are totally adopting AI products in their work, and some firms aren't using it at all. So you're just going to have to, wherever you work, you have to follow the requirements that they have. State bars are also issuing standards. They're also responsible for oversight and sanctions. And there have been some cases where lawyers who have used AI in a very egregious manner have faced disbarment, or they've been put on, they've had their bar privileges, stopped for a certain amount of time. I have a couple of examples up on our Canvas module page. The Crawbill disciplinary action. So this is a lawyer who submitted, I believe it was a motion, and it was just chock full of hallucinated citations. It was really bad. And then a second one, this MT Real Estate Investments. This is really current. It just happened last year. So these will give you an idea of what happens to lawyers who misuse AI. And I'll just say, judges do not like this. They get really, really mad about this. Okay. So what should you do if you use AI and the information is incorrect, or it has a lot of hallucinated citations? You should just always take responsibility for the mistake. Under FRCP Rule 11, the signing attorney, so you put your name on it, you are the person who is responsible for that material. Doesn't matter if a paralegal did it, doesn't matter if, one of your lawyers that you supervise did it, that doesn't matter. If your name is on it, you're responsible for that material. So if it turns out that there is incorrect information in that material, you need to take responsibility for it. Don't try to double down, because that will make it worse. Okay, judges really hate it when you do that. You need to try to attempt to address the negative impact on your client. Okay, so remember, all of your work is representing your client, right? So if you do a motion that is full of AI crap, let's put it bluntly, and that motion gets dismissed, you're impacting your client, right? So you need to be responsible for that in whatever way you can be. And if you're given the opportunity to redo the thing that you messed up, do it and don't complain about it, okay? Because the court is basically, or your supervisor or whoever is giving you a second chance to do a better job. So take them up on it, okay? So that is it for AI and emerging technologies in legal research. If you have any questions about anything that I went over today, or if you have questions about the assessment for this module, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. The other thing I want to mention is if you want to see all of the cases where lawyers have done shoddy work because of AI, in the Canvas module, I've put a link out to a database, an active database where people are submitting materials where the lawyer has messed up because of AI. So you'll get a chance to see the common mistakes that are being made, and primarily that is not double checking citations, etc. You'll also be able to see the different AI resources that they're using. Unfortunately, a lot of lawyers are using ChatGPT, which is the worst thing you could do, because it's not even pulling from legal materials necessarily. So that'll give you a good sense of what is going on with AI and legal research. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Thanks a lot. Bye.